Good afternoon.
We're going? Okay. It's almost down.
My name is Bob Welsh. I've been lucky to be the chair for the planning committee for this group, and I wish to welcome all of you. We have retitled this forum. The new title is Impact of Medicaid Managed Care on Iowans, Their Stories. A lot has happened since we received confirmation in early August from IME and all three MCOs to attend today's forum. As you all know by now, AmeriHealth is withdrawing its services at the end of November. I received an email today that said if any of you have any questions for them, they would sure be open to answering your questions. They do plan to make sure that all the providers and consumers are served. In light of this, the two remaining MCOs canceled, indicating that they needed to work on the transition. And on November 6th, we received the final word that Mickey Steer could not attend. One of you, as you came today, said they thought that I would have a table with 4 empty chairs. The planning committee of Sean Zerke, Jane Woolham, Leah Donald, Larry Coogee, who's at the table, and myself felt we should proceed with this forum. The reason we felt it was important to give consumers, providers, and advocates a voice now, not a couple of 3 months from now. This program is being taped, and copy will be sent to DHS Director Foxhoven, to IME Director Mickey Steer, who also now serves as the Deputy Director of DHS, and to the Governor. I want to make sure that you each know that you are important, and I'm glad that you are here. But let me introduce the elected officials who are here. Representing Congressman Lopsack's office, Dave Lesh, way over here.
Thank you, Dave.
There are 2 supervisors here, Rod Sullivan, who's here, and Lisa Green Douglas, way over there.
Welcome.
And we have 3 of the state senators here. Kevin Kinney.
Thank you, Kevin.
And near the back, Bob Dvorsky.
Thank you, Bob.
And up in front, Senator Joe Balcom.
Thank you, Joe. He dropped his pen. It's okay.
Now, it is our hope that many of you will take this opportunity to speak up. There will be an opportunity after the scheduled program for an open mic. But let me now turn the program over to Sean Zerke, who's immediately to my left, who is chair of the Johnson County Task Force on Aging.
Welcome. Thank you all for coming today. And, I wish that we were joined by the representatives of the Medicaid managed care organizations and Mickey Steer, but unfortunately, that isn't the case. And so in our planning and determining how to affect the greatest change for Iowans who are impacted by the policy changes of late is to tell their stories. And so we decided, Leah and Jane and I decided that we would focus on the stories, both of the consumers and the providers. And so, and uniquely, each of us has stories for both in our lives. And, ladies, there's been a lot of news coverage lately and discussion about the departure of AmeriHealth Caritas from the trio of the Medicaid providers in Iowa. And AmeriHealth held contracts and covered services for the largest portion of the Medicaid population in our state, over 23,000. Jane, I'm curious, in your experience as administrator for Johnson County Case Management, why do you think AmeriHealth ended up with the majority of the long-term services and supports community and the home and community-based service waiver clients in the first place? I mean, talk to us about the context of the contracting and the consumer concerns as far back as 2 years ago.
Okay, so I'll answer your first question. It's a very easy one. It was so they could keep their county case manager, was the reason that most of the long-term services clients decided to stay with AmeriHealth. I'm going to go back to, can you hear me, Bob? Speak up. You can actually hear the shaking in my voice if I speak up. So, on that same note, I'm going to apologize for reading this, but it's not as if I don't know what has happened in the last 2 years by heart. But as my staff and my husband know, I tend to go off on a tangent, particularly on this subject. So if I do, then nobody else will have time to speak. So
Bring the mic closer, Jane.
I'm afraid it's going to squeak at me.
You can speak softer with less squeaking.
Okay. Okay. So our story kind of begins 20 years ago. Case management for individuals with disabilities has been provided primarily by county case management agencies, a few private agencies, and a few DHS state case management agencies. When the rules for Medicaid privatization were released, we discovered that case management wasn't a covered service through Medicaid, and that meant that managed care organizations could hire their own internal case managers. At that point, about 9 of us from our region got together and began lobbying. We talked to Chuck Palmer, we talked to legislators, we talked to all of the MCOs that were at that point. I think there were maybe 9 to 11 MCOs that were bidding to have a spot in Iowa. We talked to them about the importance of case management staying with the counties. One, for continuity of care. We have some clients who have had the same case manager for 10 plus years. It's important to have that continuity of care. They know the client's history, they know the client's services that they've had, they know their story. And then we also were pushing the fact that with county case managers, there was conflict-free case management. Those requesting the services, county case managers, paid for by the county, were not getting paid by those approving the service, who was the state, which is not the case with MCOs and having their own internal case manager. The case manager that requests those services is paid for by the person that's approving the services. We then secured a contract with AmeriHealth. They decided that they would contract with outside case management agencies. The other 2 MCOs decided to hire their own internal case managers. We were thrilled. We could continue to advocate for our clients, and the bonus was we could keep our jobs as well. When it came time for clients to choose an MCO, 98% of our 500 plus clients chose AmeriHealth so they could keep their county case manager. This was pervasive across the state, which is why AmeriHealth ended up with the majority of the waiver cases, 23,000 compared to 6,000 and 7,000 for United Healthcare and AmeriGroup.
I'm going to interrupt you for 2 seconds. I just
Okay,
remember.
good, deep breath.
I just remember 2 years ago, and I'm looking here in the audience at Danielle Pettit-Majeski, and she's the director of public health for Washington County. And I remember having a conversation with you specifically about this issue and your case managers, and the fact that you would speak specifically about a couple of your consumers, your clients there in Washington County, and how your case managers knew if there was a bag of groceries at the food pantry or diapers for various clients, and so that costs are reduced, and so that those clients can get those other needs met beyond what someone sitting in an office in Des Moines can figure out for them. And so I just remember that from 2 years ago, sitting right here in this room talking about that issue. And so I know that that is about to change again.
Yeah, that was one thing we pushed with all of the MCOs, is that these case managers have worked in this business long enough to know all the resources that are in the community. most of them live here or they live close, and you have to work in this field a long time to actually gain that knowledge of knowing those resources. Someone just walking in they don't know where to go for food, or they don't know which church to ask for maybe a sofa or those kind of resources.
Exactly.
So anyway, fast forward 10 months to February 2017, we learned from the press that AmeriHealth had decided to hire their own internal case managers and take all our clients. 3 things happened at that point. Actually, I have 5 bullet points. I didn't change that. See, tangent. I can add and add. Clients, guardians, parents began calling our case managers very, very, very upset. They felt like they had been deceived. The term used again and again was bait and switch. That's okay, yes. Can I get an amen on that? They were very upset because they had chosen AmeriHealth so they could keep their case manager. We lost about 8 staff who feared they would lose their jobs when AmeriHealth took our cases. Case management agencies across the state began to close. We remained open. AmeriHealth began taking our cases in June, and so far we've lost 100 of our 500 plus cases. And that was another round of upset for parents and clients and guardians, was having just, they sent us letters and tell us which clients they were taking. It was very painful for clients and for us. Now we fast forward again to October 2017. We're informed that AmeriHealth did not secure a contract with the state and would be leaving. So, and just found out last Tuesday that all the cases would be transferred to United Healthcare. 400 jobs were lost total with AmeriHealth leaving, some of whom were losing their jobs for the second time. Those case management agencies that closed and they lost their jobs, case managers went to AmeriHealth, they're losing their jobs again. I personally know of 2 of my staff that relocated at that point and now have lost their jobs. Most of the county case managers, I think I can say this, my case managers, they hope to provide case management until they retired. And for a lot already, that is not going to happen. And my staff right now, again, for at least the 3rd time in about 18 months, they don't know if they're going to continue to have their jobs. It really bothers them. And it bothers them not only because of the loss of their job, because they don't know what's going to happen to their clients that they've cared for years and years and years. It's very hard on them too. So my point being is that Medicaid privatization has affected many, 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 many Iowans, with cutting individual services, with losing their case manager that they've had for years and years and years. Good people have lost their jobs, and good providers have gone out of business. So I think it's bigger than what we sometimes think in our own little world, what we're focused on. It's affecting a lot of Iowans. So is that a good answer?
It is.
Great.
Thank you
very much.
So, and on that note, prior to today and in our planning over the last several months, and in the aim to tell the stories of Iowans impacted by Medicaid managed care, we have pre-recorded video of some stories. And we wanted to be able to package these stories so that the news agencies, so that the administrative departments at the state of Iowa can have succinct, clean stories that hopefully drive this point home, that this isn't a political issue, this is a people issue. And these are Iowans that are impacted. And so our first video is of Phil Ross.
He is a parent of a child with, well, actually she's a woman now, a woman with disabilities. And hopefully I can get this to work.
Name is Phil Ross. Well, Emily will be 26 in a couple of days, real soon, as she has a birthday. She's nonverbal. She has Williams syndrome. So she had pretty severe physical and intellectual disabilities. Some of her physical disabilities were corrected with surgery, but she remains nonverbal and limited. That doesn't mean that she doesn't assess her environment. I mean, she really understands a lot. She definitely assesses people, not just her environment, but people, and I think that's where the case management has, I guess, come into focus for me to tell you about today. Is that, well, I worked in mental health either as a direct care person or a manager for 40 some years, and there's a lot of difference in that, but in healthcare a lot of the same principles apply in terms of being successful. It's trust, it's really understanding, that person, knowing what their needs are, what their strengths are. And I think for case management then, it's understanding what services are available, and sometimes that requires being creative. And so case management, obviously, to me, it connects all of the pieces to get the services to that person. And Emily, being disabled as she is, isn't able to articulate that, exactly what her needs are. You have to work with her a while. She has to be around you physically for her to even trust you to communicate. And so if we're doing that remotely, if we're doing it with, I guess, a role of new individuals doing case management, you're going to have to start over again. And my experience in healthcare, I worked with the VA system for a long time. And so what the university and affiliates like the VA here in town struggle with is that what the patients complain about. And that is that because of the residency programs, they have a rotation of providers and they have to tell their story all over again. Well, that's an issue if you're working with anyone, but definitely with someone like Emily, because she can't sit down and tell you all of her issues. You have to be involved with all the people that are working with her to get that information. And you can't do that with a phone call. So that's my concern, I guess, that we've had good support in that way. Amber and Rob and Mark, so we've had only 3 in 12 years, and they've all understood her case. They've spent time with her. When we've had meetings, they know what's going on at the house. They know what's going on at any learning center that she was involved with, in school or the community setting. They know what health issues she's had. They know what behavior issues she's had, which she's had a fair amount. And keeping people engaged when those problems are coming up, that's challenging. And we've had good results from those 3 case managers, and it's just, I'm not opposed to change. Trust me, I've created a lot of change in my work in 40 years of healthcare. I'm not opposed to change. I certainly evoked enough of that in my jobs working in healthcare, so I understand that. But my concern is specific with Emily. So to me, it's very important to have people involved who are going to be committed and who really understand her. And she trusts and accepts them. That's huge, because they won't get much from her if that's not there. So.
Ladies, when we look at a video like this, the biggest point that I take away from that is continuity of care. And having someone that every one of us has, I'm sure, gone to a physician, and you stay with a physician kind of like a hairdresser, because you don't have to tell them what you like or what your story is or what the background is. You have a relationship with them. And when you're dealing with healthcare and other care issues that are complex, having to retell your story and then fear that you miss an integral part of that in retelling it that makes the difference in the type of care you get is really important. Mm-hmm. And so in doing that, Leah, you know in your work as Executive Director for Access to Independence that self-advocacy is important. But when you can't advocate for yourself, or you need to advocate but you don't know who to call or what to say, or whether you're the parent or the caregiver, or you're the patient, what do you tell people? What would you tell someone as a parent? What would you tell someone in your role as executive director? How would you advise them to advocate for themselves?
Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me here. I will circle back to your question, but I did want to jump on a couple of things that I saw in the video. Is that for me?
I need help.
Okay,
Julie,
she
but
needs help. I'm okay for now.
He only showed me about 4 times, but exactly what he showed me how to do. But you go ahead.
Okay.
You did a great job.
Moving on. Smooth sailing. I am here as a professional, as the director of Access to Independence, and also as a parent. I have 2 adult children who are Medicaid members, ID waiver, and this has been a part of our life. And I'll tell you that I very much identified with Phil's comments as a parent. We want to be versatile. We want to be think long term and to appreciate all the complexities of the system and the changes of being modern Americans. But when we're talking about our loved ones and the complex care needs that they have, we already do a lot of that. Here's the file. Let me re-educate you on my child's condition, my adult daughter's needs. Having that case manager is just one of the important pieces, and I echo everything that Jane mentioned about the importance of case management. The other piece of that is providers. I am very fortunate right now that I'm alive, that my kid's dad is alive, that my kids have a natural support system in us. Not everybody is so lucky. And we need advocates. And Sean mentioned that what would I do if someone calls and asks? And people do call and they do ask, and people do approach me because they know about my kids, they know about my story. And I'll tell you, the theme that I'm kind of getting from a lot of these conversations is they don't want to rock the boat. They're really concerned because, well, I met my case manager and she's a really nice person and I don't want to get her in trouble. But I'm speaking to the advocates here, the members here, about your cares. It is so important that people understand what their rights are. And their rights are to receive quality care. The original title of our forum today was Medicaid, something like Medicaid Managed Care. Have we met our goals? Well, one of those goals was definitely quality care. And if I can do anything today, it's to encourage you that you have rights, your loved ones, the people under your scope have rights to make an appeal, to file a grievance. Those are 2 different things. And if you need help, we're here for you. There's a lot of people, a lot of organizations, a lot of friends that are happy to help you. We were really excited to see that the Ombudsman Office, I need to take advantage of my tea. It is tea. I know it looks like really bad water, but in case you were concerned about what I was drinking, it's okay. Got it from the coffee shop. So we were excited about this resource that the Ombudsman's Office put out regarding filing grievances and appeals. There's actually a built-in process, if you're not aware, if you're a Medicaid member, where you can submit either a phone call or a written complaint. And if you don't know how to do that, we actually Jane put together a wonderful little handout, which is all that information kind of smushed down into one page. So if you didn't get a chance to pick that up at the front, Larry is holding it up.
Raise your hand. There he is.
Thanks, Larry. Please take one of those. Please share that with someone. And if you do need some support in filing that grievance, that appeal, please reach out and get some support. It does not mean you're a complainer. This information needs to go to the right people so they can have knowledge of what's really happening to real Iowans today. So thank you. I hope I covered your question.
You did. As a side note, I got notified on LinkedIn today that my friend Kelly Todd is no longer the Medicaid MCO ombudsman for the state of Iowa. Congratulations to her. She works for Iowa Healthcare Collaborative. But so we don't actually have an ombudsman for Medicaid MCO right now. So another consideration is having that advocacy position is not filled at the state level. We do have another video from the Jeter family that, Jane, you want to talk a little bit about
I'll preface
that?
this a little bit. I felt very fortunate and lucky to meet this family. They are a wonderful, wonderful, caring, loving family who has done the best for their kids. They're men now. I have such trouble with that because I think I want to call my children kids for the rest of their life. But I'll let you see the video. Their father is retired and is an individual CDAC worker. So hopefully. Oh, really? Oh, okay.
You got it. Oh, push it again. There you go.
Okay, first of all, this is James Jeter. That's John Jeter, and that's my husband Dean Jeter, and I'm Jan Jeter. John was born in 1974 and with the diagnosis of spina bifida and hydrocephalus. It was pretty grim at first, but we learned to deal with that, and we already had 2 sons who were a little bit older than John. And so when I was pregnant with Jim, we were concerned, but we thought that there was not a real high percentage of chance of having another child with spina bifida. Well, lo and behold, Jim was born, and right away we knew right away that he had spina bifida and hydrocephalus. My husband and I, we took one look and we're like, we knew immediately that it would be better for Jim than it had been for John. Anyway, Jim was driving, doing with hand controls, and was doing very well, going to Kirkwood, and then at the age of 25 he had a stroke which required neurosurgery and a long rehab. Things were pretty grim, but you know, we thought, well, we can take care of that. So we brought him home, took care of him. They didn't think he would talk, and we show up one day when he was still in rehab, and he says, "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad." And anyway, it was a long, long process. That was about the point where we got in with the social services, and Jim was put on the brain injury waiver, and that's when the services started with the Department of Human Services. After a while, then Dean became a CDAC provider, which I was working, so his job had business had been sold, so he was the logical person to be the care provider for Jim once he was home and out of rehab. So I did some of the care before I went to work, and then while I was gone, Dean was his care provider, and we pretty much shared a lot of the responsibilities. Jim has done very well, but unfortunately he doesn't walk anymore. He's in a power chair, but he has established employment and does very well with what he does. Anyway, then we had the Medicaid switch over to privatization, and that was really, really hard. It was a confusing process. We didn't feel like there was really anything broken with the other system when it was state operated. There was always some issues with payment, getting the claims once we filed. having them processed, and there was always a question, and that always took some time to go back and find out what the trouble was, and that was also time that would have been better spent taking care of Jim and doing something for him instead of trying to be on the computer or on the phone trying to find an appropriate person to discuss the problem with. That was always an issue. Having life-altering situations like this, it really changes all your family dynamics. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that, and it's a 24/7 job. I think we've survived pretty well and have done very well. Respite is still a problem. I can give my husband respite from his job, but then that confuses the situation with our time as a couple. It's hard. I often said, yeah, I went to work and then I came home and worked some more. So, and that's fine. Work never hurt anybody. Being a CDAC provider and having some pay as far as the care for Jim, that really helps us. That takes the stress somewhat off of the, finding the money to keep all of us and keep things going. If we didn't have that, that might affect their placement. As far as healthcare costs, which I'm well aware of healthcare costs, having the boys live here is probably the most economical solution that there is for taking care of them. Since the changeover with the case management and that, we really didn't have much contact with our case manager. I did talk to that person once or twice, and I got the feeling that person was kind of overwhelmed with what was happening. There was a hitch or two with claim payments. Once or twice, AmeriHealth only paid part of a claim, and anyway, that had to go back to the case manager with them, who obviously had to put another piece of information in to cover that other part of the claim, and that happened 2 or 3 times, and then obviously it was figured out that that's what needed to happen. So I don't know if if that's going to be something that happens in the future or not. So I think for the most part, I think people have probably been fairly patient, although I know there's been a lot of information and a lot of people have complained. I don't know what it will take to fix things, but obviously it needs to be fixed. So to be able to maintain and continue to provide for our family, that's the world. So
I just want to thank the Jeter family for telling their story. Everyone wants to be able to live and work in their community of choice, regardless of whether they have a disability or they're aging. Over 90% of Iowans want to age in place, and it is far less costly. As we all know, many of us have seen the statistics. It's nationally a third less to provide someone the same level of care for so say it's 3 activities of daily living that are being provided for someone in a nursing home. It's a third less cost to provide them the same level of care in their own home. And in Iowa, it's 1/5 the cost to provide the same level of care in their own home. When you're talking about a CDAC provider, that gentleman decided when his business ended that he would be the most logical choice to provide care for their family members. We have a direct care worker shortage in the state of Iowa, period. We have a rapidly aging population. If someone is leaving their job or not pursuing additional employment in order to provide care for one or two family members, it makes sense to pay them to do that care. They're not working somewhere else. Many people don't make that connection. They always think it's someone else outside needs to be hired. Well, I have several friends who are paraplegic or quadriplegic that go through probably 24 providers in a year. Can you imagine having to have someone show up in the morning, noon, and the evening? You want to stay in your own home? You may actually be employed on your own. And now you have 4 or 5 people coming in during the week, and someone new every time because the agency you hired can't keep them employed. And so you're having to tell them, yes, you need to stretch my right arm farther, or you have to teach them how to take care of you over and over and over. That is an added stress that actually makes it difficult to have your physical therapy be beneficial, to keep this standard of living that you should have. And so people don't understand all these little pieces about changing providers, shortage providers, being paid. When some radio button on the case manager's side in Des Moines that has no idea who you are, has never seen your face, they didn't push that radio button, so you didn't get paid. They have bills to pay. They want to stay in their home. And a lot of people don't understand the total story. Mm-hmm. And so, and on that note of being paid and being a provider of services, with AmeriHealth Caritas departure from the state, they not only had the larger percentage of number rather of consumers, they also had the larger percentage of providers contracted with them. And so, much like Jane with Johnson County Case Management, they only were contracting with AmeriHealth Caritas. And so, and providing case management for the ones that they didn't take away from them. And so, one of the reasons, so we talked about the reasons that consumers chose AmeriHealth Caritas in the beginning was because they could stay with their case manager that they knew. Well, many of these providers didn't choose to contract with United Healthcare or AmeriGroup because they were still paying the 2014 floor rate and not adjusting with cost of living or raises or staff change. I mean, anything that you would normally renegotiate in moving your business forward. And so I want to have a little bit of a chat with Leah and Jane about capitation and floor rates and the cost of service units versus the capitated rate that the MCOs are being paid. You know, this mom talked about the old system being the better, being just fine. It had its issues, but they weren't these issues. And now we've added a whole nother layer of issues on to an already flawed system. And we've added a third party that is trying to make profit in the midst of all of this. And so I do math. I love math. I love numbers. People that know me know that. And so when I sit down and do the math, I'm trying to understand how the justification of keeping a fixed line item in the state budget for Medicaid is justified when you now have asked a third party to come in, manage it for a fixed price, but they also have to make, they're a for-profit business. Even if it's a 0.5% profit, it's profit, and that's an added extra layer of cost, because I'm not aware that IME actually cut a bunch of jobs out, and so their budget stayed the same. So I'm trying to understand how the state actually made money, and we'll probably talk to Senator Bolcom about that towards the end a bit as well. But ladies, do you have some perspective on this as well to offer?
You know what, I think if we switch this around and maybe have two of our guests come up, they can offer a lot of information about that.
Okay, who would
Better
you
than
s-
I
who
can.
would you like?
Mary Roberts and Ann Brownsberger, sorry.
So Mary Roberts with the Village and Child Serve, and she's a caregiver and advocate, and Ann Brownsberger is also with the Village. Welcome, ladies. Do we need the wireless?
I think I can talk loud enough. I know you.
Oh, well, this is being taped, so we really do want good audio.
I'd rather stay.
Do you want us to hand them the
I
microphone?
was gonna say, yeah, well, then we'll be.
You can take mine, I'll stand back here.
Here, hand them the
Where's wire?
microphone.
Okay.
We're just gonna hand the microphone over, Eric.
That's fine.
Okay.
Do you wanna go?
Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Do you want us to just introduce ourselves
Yeah,
first and kind
sure.
of our relation to this issue? We both wear multiple hats. I'll go first and just kind of give you, sorry, the light is blinding me, give you some context for my relationship to this issue and this population. Personally, I'm the parent of two young adults. They're almost 24 and 25. They both are significantly affected by autism, which means they're nonverbal. They have significant behavioral challenges. We receive services, they live in the family home through the HCBS ID waiver, and they have since they were very young. We've been lucky enough, because my children are on the HIP program, to not have to transition to managed care. So we've been able to stay with county case management, of which we've always had wonderful experiences. Professionally, I am the Autism Center Coordinator at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. I do a lot of advocacy work for families who have children with special needs who have been significantly affected by Medicaid modernization. It's really disconcerting, the things that I've heard and the stories that they tell. And then on a kind of personal and professional level, I'm one of the co-founders of the Village community. Three of us parents, Annie and Brenda Kurtz, who's in the back, we all have children with special needs who were aging out of the school system, and we wanted social and recreational opportunities for them that were kind of up to our standards as parents, and we created a 501c3 that provides day habilitation. One of the things I'm hoping we're going to discuss that was just put out there last Thursday was the new tiered rate system that's going to significantly impact providers and their ability to provide care to this population. Just on a side note, before I give it to you, I wanted to especially thank the elected officials that are here, especially those of you in particular that I'm seeing have been wonderful advocates and allies for our community, and it's very appreciated. So thank you for your work.
Ann Brownsberger. I'm, like Mary said, one of the co-founders of the Village community. I also have a 20-year-old daughter. I have three children. My oldest, Allison, who's 20 years old, is affected by a rare chromosome anomaly resulting in intellectual disability, developmental delay, and still lives in our family home. Like Mary said, we were looking just kind of for an alternate to what was currently available for her once she exited the school system, to provide her with activities and opportunities during the day to remain engaged and an integral part of her community. And so we have been able to successfully do that with the creation of the Village community. But again, like Mary said, are concerned about what that's going to look like going forward with the implementation of tiered rates effective December 1st. Jane, what specifically did you want us to talk about? Just our personal stories or our experience as an organization?
We're talking about provider issues. Can you talk about how Medicaid revitalization has affected your agency?
Yeah, so we are a small organization. We currently have 16 members. Of those 16, 10 of them were exempt from the transition to MCOs because they were eligible for HIP. So that carve-out has been much appreciated and has really allowed our organization in some times during this transition to stay afloat. The other 6 of our members who are with an MCO are all with AmeriHealth. We experienced some pretty significant challenges when the transition first took place with receiving payment for services that were provided and just getting established with case managers for those who were not able to stay with county case management. And that's sort of been a transition over time, as Jane kind of talked a little bit about, as one by one those individuals were transferred from county case managers to AmeriHealth case managers. But we were able to kind of weather that storm, and things have been going along pretty steady. Again, now this with the new announcement that AmeriHealth will be departing from the state of Iowa, and at the same time, the implementation of the tiered rate system for rehabilitation, we're a little bit up in the air as to how we're going to proceed. One of the issues that we have that's I'm not sure if it's unique to the village, but I can only speak for our experience. All 16 of our members are pretty affected behaviorally, socially, and in multiple areas of, what would you want to say, personal care, multiple areas of life skills. Because of that, we staff at about a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 staff to member ratio. And we're able to do so and provide high level of care because the reimbursement rate that we currently have is reflective of our cost of providing that care. That reimbursement rate was negotiated with our region, and we had to do significant cost reporting in order to show that we were only asking for funds to cover the cost of service provision. Now, with the implementation of tiered rates, which will be effective December 1st, we're looking at a 53% reduction in reimbursement rates. So something that's not doable for us in the short term, and especially not in the long term. When we're looking at providing the level of care that we are to some pretty significantly affected individuals. And all of these individuals, I think we can provide a lot of anecdotal evidence, but also can provide documentation and data from their behavioral health teams to show that they really are making significant progress with the amount of support that they're getting. So it's one of those cases where you say, okay, an individual is doing great because they have all of these things in place. And so people are inclined then to say, well, if they're doing great, they shouldn't need this level of service anymore. And they start picking away at that. And then pretty soon, I see a lot of heads nodding, you know where this all goes. And so that's what we're looking at. Can we provide care to these individuals at a 1-to-8 or 1-to-10 ratio? Yes, if our only intention is to keep them alive. If we want to be able to sustain them at the level that they're at and to keep them integrated into their community, which is another DHS initiative that I think has been a little bit of a challenge, but providers have been meeting that challenge of making sure that individuals are more fully integrated into the larger community. We can only do that when we are reimbursed at the level that we need to provide the support that individuals need to be successful in doing so. So I don't know if there's anything that you would add to that.
I think you covered it. Is that kind of a snapshot?
That is, and thank you very much. And quite frankly, I just want to tell you, Jane said, I don't know what they're going to talk about. They could talk about anything, but it doesn't matter because it's going to be great. So thank you, ladies, very, very much.
That wear many hats.
Yes.
And I applaud you both for what you've done in the community.
Yeah, I would say too, just kind of to add as a parent who works and meets with a lot of other parents and does a lot of networking. I think there's also been, with the transition to MCOs, a lot of inconsistency in what services are being provided and what services are being allowed and the level of service that's being allowed or provided. And so kind of helping families to navigate that system and like you talked about, families having rights, knowing what those are, how to advocate for those, being able to, we're finding that we almost have to be attorneys to be able to pick from Iowa code and to be able to reference that information to provide to individuals who, quite frankly, should have more information than we do is extremely frustrating. And so in addition to those other hats, we are also now feeling like we have to be experts in law. And so, again, like echoing what Mary said, for all of you who have been able to help us, travel this path, we appreciate all of your efforts.
Thank you, ladies, very much. I'm also going to now invite Bob Bacon up. And Bob is the former director of the Iowa Center for Excellence on Disabilities at the CDD at the University of Iowa and at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics.
Take my spot, it's easier.
Okay. And Bob, I know, is going to talk about a couple of things, but one of them is money follows the person. And since we're talking about paying for care, this is a great topic, and that's why I decided to bring you up now.
Okay, well, good. Well, I did retire from the Center for Disabilities and Development last July, But I say I did not retire from the disability rights movement, and that's why I do appreciate this opportunity to talk today. The Center for Disabilities and Development had partnered with the Department of Human Services over the years on many, many significant efforts. And all of them, in one way or another, were related to making life in the community more possible for individuals with disabilities. And the reason I thought it would be good to mention Money Follows the Person is that that is a program that it's a DHS program. CDD was simply DHS's partner to implement it. And, by just a tangent, over the years, I've met so many wonderful people who work at the Department of Human Services. They are dedicated. They want to do the best job they possibly can. But in my opinion, they are under-resourced and also underappreciated. But Money Follows the Person. I'm not sure if you are familiar with its background. It was one of the federal government's main initiatives to implement the Olmstead Supreme Court decision, and it's a partnership between the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and state departments of human services. Over the past 10 years, we began it in 2007. We helped the Department of Human Services write the request for proposal to CMS, and we helped leverage $52 million for Iowa. And over the years now, we have helped 632 individuals transition from institutional settings to the community. That's transitioning from intermediate care facilities for people with intellectual disabilities, and also transitioning from nursing homes. But with the inauguration of Medicaid managed care, the implementation of MFP has become more and more difficult. I'll give you a few examples which relate to the basic problem, which is that the MCOs could not pay the same rate that we were able to provide during the transition year. In other words, the federal government did make it possible for there to be additional dollars for enhanced services in the transition year. It's obviously a complex undertaking to help people move from an institutional setting to the community. But what's happened on day 366 with managed care is that the more generous provider rate has been withdrawn. And as a result, a variety of things have happened. I could give you many examples, but I'll give you three. Several individuals who were successfully transitioned to the community have now had to move out of state to institutions. Youth in PMICs, or psychiatric medical institutions for children. Several youth have actually been discharged back home to family with no services in place. One youth actually went to a youth homeless shelter. Money Follows the Person members with brain injury who had been successfully transitioned to the community from nursing facilities have had to return to those facilities because the MCOs would not support them above the brain injury cap. So it's no surprise that providers, and there are so many good providers throughout the state, more and more providers had to take the position that unless the MCOs would guarantee a rate that would allow them to meet the complex needs of the individuals they were trying to support, they simply declined to participate any longer. So,
Hey, Bob, I have a quick question for you.
yep.
So help me with the math on this one. If what I said earlier is the case and nursing home care, I'm just going to pull a number, it's probably way low, but say it costs $200 a day to stay in a nursing home. And you have 4 activities of daily living that are provided for that $200 a day. And statistically, it's a third the cost to provide that care for a direct care worker in your own home. And so when you're talking about money follows the person and complying with Olmstead, and someone does not want to live in a nursing home, but they want to be back in their community. And so the transition costs include setting them up potentially for housing, and so then they qualify maybe for Section 8 housing or other subsidy for housing. Is it, and the cost is still less to be in their community of choice, then why is there all of a sudden no money to have, why is it that the MCOs are choosing to place them in a nursing home versus coordinating care in their community
Yeah.
when it's less costly to them?
I don't know.
And they keep the difference of that capitated rate, right? So say they get $4,000 per member per month, and they're $200 a day. That's more. But then they have other members that they're getting $4,000 per member per month that are costing them, $76 a week.
Yeah, it's, the math doesn't work as far as I
just want to check my math.
But I can tell you though, in terms of money follows the person, we first helped transition individuals from Woodward and Glenwood resource centers. The average cost of supporting someone at Woodward or Glenwood a year is $279,000.
Wow.
We know from the data that we keep during the transition year that the average cost of supporting someone in a community residence is $105,000. So, I mean, yeah. So
That's $174,000 savings.
And the mention of tiered rates, they are going to go into effect December 1st. Something that's particularly poignant to me about them now is that they only apply to the ID waiver, not to the brain injury waiver. And I would say that over the past few months, there's been more of a chill in terms of supporting people with brain injury to transition. And I guess, and I hope there are providers here who are going to be speaking about how the tiered rates affect them, so I won't talk more about that. But I guess my opinion, I did work at the Center for Disabilities and Development for almost 40 years. And my opinion is that unless the problem of finding funding to support individuals for complex needs is addressed, we are going to be going back to the days of institutionalization. And that's why I want to take a few minutes to sound the alarm relating to potential actions at the federal level that will affect community living. When you consider the additional threats that come from Medicaid reform, the repeal that was attempted several times in terms of the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. You look at that, and you also look at the potential threat to Medicaid reductions through tax reform that's now being debated. You couple that with Medicaid managed care, and you have a potential triple whammy. And in terms of how it affects Iowa, those of us who have aged we can remember that there was a time when county property taxes covered the lion's share of human services. And they also, but then the whole movement of redesign, for Iowa going from a county-based system to a regional system. I think one of the things that was that finally reached the breaking point was that counties were having to have a greater and greater percentage of their funding going to human services as opposed to other needs. And so that's why I think we reached the tipping point, and redesign happened. So let's see, where was I here? As a result of redesign, the state, for the first time, started to use state tax dollars to cover the Medicaid match. Prior to that, it was county property tax dollars that were drawing down the federal share. So when you think of Medicaid expansion, which was also part of the Affordable Care Act, Iowa took advantage of that. And as a result, tens of thousands of individuals with mental health challenges have been covered, but covered no longer with county property taxes, but through Medicaid. Now, if the Affordable Care Act is repealed and Medicaid's expansion goes away for Iowa, that is just super serious. Another aspect of what's happening at the federal level, if Medicaid reform went through so that there would be per capita caps or block grants, eventually the cost of Medicaid would rise, because generally health care costs rise higher than the regular standard of living. And eventually states would be faced with the decision of having to cut services. That is just inevitable. Well, under Medicaid law, there's a certain set of mandated services that you have to provide, and then there are so-called optional services. Mandated services include institutional services. Optional services include the home and community-based waivers.
That are less expensive.
Throw
that in there.
So, in terms of just another whammy, that's it's just stunning. So, let's say that those cuts happen at the federal level. Can Iowa's budget make up, the state budget make up for those cuts? It's not going to happen. And so if people are going to be able to get services, will the counties in Iowa once again have to take a disproportionate responsibility for making the services available? I don't know. So what can we do? I mean, we have to be vigilant about what's happening at the federal level, because it'll make the implementation of managed care in Iowa exponentially more difficult if those bad things take place. So I think one thing that we can do is have meetings like this. And because, and of course we've got our wonderful senators here in the room and who have always been disability champions. But my view, some of you know, I was a Kennedy Public Policy Fellow back in 1997. And that's when the Republicans had just taken over Congress. And I was placed with the Republicans in the Committee on Education and the Workforce, and I had the opportunity to work on the reauthorization of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And that was the best experience I ever could have had, because it was a lonely year, but it was a year that was so well spent, because I learned that the importance of operating on the assumption that if policymakers have good information, they make better decisions. And maybe it's just my temperament, but more than that, I've also recognized that there's a way to frame issues in a way that can appeal no matter what your political party. Not every issue, but there are. I really am going on and on. You didn't know what you were. You didn't know what you were
No,
getting.
but I agree with you. I said
Yeah.
it earlier. This is a people issue, not a political issue.
Yeah, right.
And if we can come together on what we agree on, which is helping people at the lowest cost with the best care that they want, then we all agree on that. And if we can keep refocusing the decisions to come in line with that agreement, then the best decisions made on behalf of Iowans will be made.
Yep, especially in Iowa, for crying out loud. I mean, look at redesign and how that happened. I mean, to me, that was Iowa at its best in some ways. It was a bipartisan effort, and it was oriented basically, in three places. Olmsted was mentioned in the legislative in the code that drove redesign, for crying out loud. So, so anyway, so amen to this kind of
Thank you.
bipartisan effort.
Thank you very much for coming up, Bob. We really appreciate it. We'll give you a little round of applause. And on that note, we do have another video here from a consumer, Casey Hayes. And this does have subtitles, so you may want to read at the bottom of the screen.
Just to preface this video, Casey is a long-term
Talking to you.
Casey is a long-term client of ours. This last year, she has actually kept her county case manager this whole time, but AmeriHealth was pushing lately to have her pull away from her individual CDAC workers and go back to a home health agency, which her case manager knew she had tried multiple times. Will tell you she'll tell you her story in this video, but the case manager advocated and got her 6 more months extended with her individual CDAC worker, so we were successful in that endeavor. My concern with transitioning to case managers with another MCO is we do know for a fact that when a client appealed a decision by AmeriHealth and had an AmeriHealth case manager, the letter specifically stated that the AmeriHealth case manager could not be present during the appeal. So that's who does it for them then? The client? What if they don't speak? The parent, do they know all the administrative law rules? No.
Or what if that consumer doesn't have an advocate,
Anyone.
anybody?
Right. So in this situation, the case management agency hung on. They were not getting paid, but they hung on and helped with the appeals. And we have had case managers in our department do appeals too, and just to say they did a great job and they won. So, and Anyway,
Cue it up.
I'll cue it up if I can.
I'm Casey Hayes. I was born with cerebral palsy, and I learned how to walk as a young child, and I did a lot of stuff. I went to college and worked in Chicago and stuff like that. But I'm the oldest of 5, so I always wanted to have a baby. So when I was 33 in Chicago, I had my baby. And when I was in Chicago and had the baby, I knew that the best services, community-based services, that I could orchestrate would be in Iowa. And so I immediately decided to come back to Iowa City specifically, so I could use the services that independently care for my child. But I like to be in charge. That's part of me being the oldest child is I like to be in charge. So I like to be able to have people come in and be able to say, okay, this is what you can do for me today. And that's really important to me. I've been hiring my own consumer-directed attendant care for 20 years now. Because a long time ago, I only needed an hour a day, and now I need more. But I have found that using individuals from the community that I'm connected with an agency are more able to meet my needs. Like I have one woman that worked for me for 13 years, and that means that I have less stress. And using an agency means that I have rotation of individuals coming into my house, and I finally just gave up the organization of the kitchen because I couldn't continue to teach another person and another person where to put stuff. I used to have 2, but because they don't get paid for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, the other person had to quit. The quality of care has decreased, and the amount of hours that are accessible to me are less because the agency gets so much off the top. And then I've been told by workers that work for agencies that they only get minimum wage when I can pay an individual way above minimum wage. I think that if I have an individual dedicated to me and wants to help me in that way, that's really important, and that's above minimum wage type of work. And people who work for me have to live. Well, I'm just praying to God that we can go back to one consolidated place. Oh, and I would also like to say that I wrote to the governor, and this was after Governor Reynolds took over, and she wrote back and told me that it's an Obamacare issue. And I'm just like, seriously? In what world is Medicaid an Obamacare issue? It's like, she doesn't even know what happened with the MPLs and Medicaid. You know? And that's just crazy.
Casey just wants to have banana bread. I mean,
Yes.
that's part of her story. You didn't see that. We obviously had to cut these down a little bit, but Casey, teaching people where to put things and how to help her make banana bread. That's what part of her quality of life. And it's not a huge amount of time, but these things make a difference. And everything she said is so true, so true.
Yeah, Casey had a lot to say. She truly did. And I just wanted to thank Coral Vision 2 for helping us orchestrate these videos. Did a great job.
Eric Dickerson
I
to
dreaded
the rescue.
I dreaded the task of him cutting these down to make them. I mean, we could. Parents and clients talked for 20, 25, 30 minutes sometimes. They had a lot to say, and they said it well, way better than I could have said it. One thing that struck me with Casey is when she said, I came to Iowa for the best services, I thought, would you come again? With what's going on? And that makes me sad. That makes me sad for my kids that are growing up here. I know people are fighting with this. I know Senator Bolcom, I listened to him at the MAC meeting, and he's fighting really hard. But I didn't ask her that at that point. We continued to listen to her story, and one thing that also struck me is that she said, I feel guilty for asking for more. And she told the story of how she didn't get care one day. One of her workers didn't show up, and her CDAC worker came to her house and said, well, Casey, your hair looks the same as yesterday, and you have the same socks on. And she said, but at least I ate. And I were just, well, Eric and I are like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And we told her, you can ask for more. That's what we want to give you, is be able to give you more. You deserve more. You deserve your basic needs met. It's a human right to have your basic needs met. And for the big push to be, I also heard this from our
Ann and Mary.
Yes, and
Yes.
I heard this at the MAC meeting too, and at the Legislative Oversight meeting that I listened to, is that they're pushing for more of those straight Medicaid services, and then we can get. Then once you access those, you can get more waiver services. Was the comment that was made, and Casey has accessed straight Medicaid services. They don't work for her. She has to have someone get her out of bed in the morning. She has to have someone change her. She has to have someone bathe her. She wants someone that she trusts. She doesn't want to spend her valuable time reteaching a person over and over and over and over again. Home health agencies, we're not saying anything bad about them. They are great. They're wonderful. Kudos to everybody who works there. They work for some people, but they don't work for others. And that's the point that we're trying to push, is not everybody fits into this nice little, hole. It doesn't work. And that's one thing that we found with our case managers advocating, is that it's just, they find one thing, like, we're not going to go over the BI waiver cap. We're not doing it. Not at all. Well, some people need to be, if they're in a 24-hour situation, living in a waiver home, you have to go over the BI waiver cap to pay the providers. Or where are they going to go? Like Bob said, an institution. Is that better? So it's just, Casey it was a joy to meet her, and she had so much to say, and I wanted to get the one thing on tape that didn't, because we had to cut it down, but she was actually a director for disability advocates, and she actually got arrested at the White House, which I thought was super cool, advocating for clients with disabilities.
Yeah.
So,
Can I throw
Yeah,
one quick comment? I'm aware of the time issue.
No, you're fine.
But I just wanted to appreciate Bob's comments about the broad picture, and some of the other presenters today made comments about how important it is that we understand the larger context of this issue and where we could potentially be going in not just the years ahead, but in the months and weeks ahead. And we as a state have done some really excellent things. And Bob spoke of Money Follows the Person and how we have worked with that in our state. And we have done some innovative things and some creative things, and we understand what our population needs here. And when we didn't, we figured it out. And I think that that's the piece here, is that we can talk about what went wrong when managed care was implemented, and there were many things that we could talk about. But I think our biggest job right now is to educate and advocate, and to make sure that people understand really what's happening. And these stories are really illuminating how this really works. Medicaid is a complex thing, and most people don't really get it, and I understand why. It's very hard to understand. But these stories are illustrating how it works, how it's working well, and suddenly when the bottom drops out, what are we going to do? And that's one of my many, many concerns here, but I will leave it at that, and then
No,
Sean
that's
can-
really good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Leah. And I know that we're going to have Senator Bolcom come up. I'm really excited to have him come up and share his heart on the issue. And in leading into that, we're going to do one more video, and I think her closing statements will be a great intro for Senator Bolcom.
Right, and they did such a wonderful job, I don't even think I have to preface this one.
All right. And so this is the Mulhausen family.
Okay, my name is Teresa Mulhausen,
Go ahead.
and
Ryan
this is Ryan Mulhausen,
Mulhausen.
my son.
Awesome.
Awesome. Uh-oh.
Ryan has, what do you have, Ryan?
A son.
No,
Fragile X.
Fragile X syndrome, and another diagnosis of autism. He has had the same case manager. He is looked after by Systems Unlimited. They have done a wonderful job. He has had the same case manager probably 15 years,
He tore that down.
would be what I would guess. With the privatization of Medicaid, when these companies decide to move the case management in-house, then Ryan will lose his case manager. Now, the state of Iowa, since they've backed off and privatized Medicaid, well, this insurance company that's leaving Iowa wants to get rid of Ryan's job coach. The thing that I find the most disturbing about what Governor Branstad did in privatizing Medicaid is giving basically money that I think we're responsible for paying to help people like Ryan and people with other problems, putting that in the hands of a company that is for profit.
I can't hear it.
Now, this company that Ryan is part of, AmeriHealth, now they're leaving the state. That means Ryan will have to probably lose his case manager that he has known for a long time. That will be traumatic in and of itself. That will be devastating. Not for him, but for me. Because it just makes a parent feel so good, so secure when people know your son, when they know your loved one.
They get look from.
She knows what he needs. She knows how to advocate for him, and she will. A for-profit company, I don't think, I don't think they will care. I really don't. So I don't know whose bright idea that was, but yes, they're going to lose money. All these companies are going to lose money, and they're going to leave. At least we could count on the state of Iowa. He needs assistance with practically everything.
Everything?
And we had some lady come from a company, Telegen, who was helping Iowa manage Medicaid, I think. I don't really know what they do. They did assessments. We had to sit there and talk about how many minutes it takes Ryan to brush his teeth and how much assistance he needs. How, for every little thing, we had to decide how much time that took. Units of time.
That's it.
Well, units of time mean something to administrators. Units of time mean nothing to us. We're talking about taking care of a human being. We're not talking about, well, exactly how much help does he need, because it's different. And different people with disabilities have different needs. And sometimes Ryan will have a lot of problems with something that normally he doesn't, and that adds a lot more time. And while I'm on this subject, it is amazing that the very people who take care of Ryan and individuals in his boat are some of the lowest paid people out there. So I know that these companies also will look to cut services and money paid to systems and companies who take care of these individuals. My gosh, you don't pay them anything, so what are you going to cut? You know, I mean, there are lots of reasons why Ryan needs the services that he gets.
Mom, you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Me too.
Are you okay?
I'm okay, Mom.
When you have a for-profit company who's making those decisions, gee,
Too quiet.
do you think they're going to care? Because actually, those services take money out of their pockets. Brenda knows she's going to get paid.
Wow.
She's going to do her job.
Okay.
And to even be in some of the professionals who work with Ryan,
That's great.
I mean, they're just big hearts of gold.
What's the problem?
And it isn't about money. It's about quality of life.
Life?
We owe them some quality in life.
Yeah.
If it were about money, systems wouldn't exist because they would be out having other jobs where they could get paid a lot of money, a lot more money than they make. And,
Dear.
I mean, God bless them.
God bless
They're
you.
wonderful people.
Good job, dear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And these companies are going to keep losing money, and they're all going to leave.
Leave us.
Now, my husband asked me, so what do you think the fix is? And I think the fix is, there's still some people being served by Medicaid in the state of Iowa. I say take this population, which is obviously costing a ton of money, the state, take them back.
Oh.
And because this is going to keep happening. There's no making money on this. It is, like I said, it's not about money. But they're going to make it about money because they have to make it about money because they have shareholders. I imagine their CEO is extremely well paid while he's cutting my son's
Bills.
job coach. And who pays for all of this? Ryan.
Not me either.
Yeah, you do.
I do too.
The service is being cut. My hours are fine. My job's fine.
What?
It's Ryan.
Not me.
They need, these are human,
hold
they're
it.
human beings. This is
My
ridiculous.
phone?
I mean, it's really ridiculous. And it's mean. I mean,
Is
it's,
that you or me?
all I can say is that everybody in legislature, everybody, governor, all of them, they need to have someone in their lives like Ryan.
Like me?
So they can see and they can understand what we live through, what we go through, and what we fight for. And I will say this to all the parents, all the families, all the agencies out there, now is the time. Now is the time to fight.
Fight back.
Because this is not fair and it's not morally right.
Is that over?
Yeah.
We did it.
Good job, Ryan. And
Good job,
Teresa.
Ryan.
They're in the back.
Yeah, Ryan is in the back if you want to. Thank you so much, Ryan and Mulhausen family. We really appreciate you and your story and your closing words. Now's the time to fight. Now's the time to say something. We do have two other scheduled speakers, and so first I'm going to have Roger Gedkin with Successful Living come up. Roger, we're going to have you sit, and if you want to slide the stool over closer to you, Jane.
I just wanted to add to the video, the services that they were trying to cut were Ryan's supported employment. He works 8 hours a week, and he has a job coach for all of that time. And his mom asked him if he liked his job, and he said yes. She said, do you like getting a paycheck? And he said yes. And she said, what do you do with your paycheck, Ryan? He said, I pay my bills. So that in and of itself was he's out there working. He's integrated in the community, which is a big federal push right now, to be integrated in the community. And he's paying his bills. He's a member of the community, and that's what they want to cut. He talked about Brenda, his wonderful case manager. She got his job coaching extended for another 6 months through AmeriHealth, fighting with AmeriHealth to do that. So we hope it continues, because he likes his job, and it's important to him, and he does a good job. So anyway.
Thank you, Jane. If you want to hand him the microphone.
Yes, I will.
And Roger, you're with Successful Living, and you wanted to talk a little bit today about...
I guess I wanted to touch on the experiences that we've had since the privatization of Medicaid, and as an organization. So I'm the executive director of Successful Living, and have been there for about almost 7 years. So we've seen a few things change, and I think that's one of the biggest things for our agency. We strive to do provide the best services possible. We try to. I guess our mission really is both for our clients and our staff, and I think what we've seen is a lot more tightening of things, a lot of more changes than we really needed to, felt like we should have had, and a real significant increase in our administration costs that we need to have, oversights. We've hired an additional full-time QA position, amongst other things. So I think there's a lot of changes that have occurred over the last, for us, we're in the rehabilitation area, and so we've been working with the MCOs for, about 2 years now. And so what the changes that are occurring with the, at least the ID waiver, the tiered rates and such, that was a huge change for our agency, going from an hourly to a tiered rate. And if there's any changes that happen, I think that's the one that amongst our agency, our staff, and our clients that we work with, rather than work within a certain set amount of time, you have to be with somebody for a couple hours at a minimum, has been really, really difficult for a lot of our clients, because the flexibility has been lost. Not totally, but I think it's been really changed dramatically. That and just how to schedule throughout the day, being able to work with more than 3 clients in a day, things like that. So I think the more or less what I wanted to say is that things seem to have gone more smoothly, and I get that with MCOs, they just moved into the state of Iowa fairly recently, relatively speaking, and I know it takes time to transition to things, but we've seen a tightening and less of a lot more challenge in getting services that we felt that our clients needed, and having to fight for those. And also, I would even add, I think since the beginning of this year, my boss and I sat down earlier today, and we realized that, well, didn't just realize, but our agency of a revenue of about $1 million a year, we're short so far this year of about $80,000. So that's a lot of money that we have been able to collect, and a cut of close to 10% in your budget for just not getting paid has been difficult. So that just means, can't give raises, can't do a lot of things. But that's really...
So that the tiered rate system,
yeah,
that impacts you because you cannot, even if you've hired a quality person to monitor quality and outcomes, that value-based care part,
right,
it's still prescriptive in what you can do. So you can't really run your business and help your clients and focus on quality outcomes in the amount of time it takes, because one day someone who requires 3 minutes of assistance with one task, and then they have a bad day, as we heard in Ryan's situation, where something that doesn't normally take
right,
a certain amount of time all of a sudden does. You don't have flexibility in either being able to compensate, right, or be able to add an extra client in that day because it didn't take quite as long.
Yeah, I think the changes with the clients that we work with day to day and month to month, some days and months go better than others. And so to have the flexibility that, and lose that really, and you have to negotiate for the tier level, that sort of thing, as most of us know here. It's been a loss of quality of service provision, I'd have to say. So,
Even though you're focused on quality outcomes,
Right.
what they're measuring doesn't really impact the consumer as much.
right, I would have to say, I agree. So
Agree.
that's all I had to say about it.
Thank you very much for coming to talk to us, Roger.
I know you'll get me back for that one, probably.
So, many of us saw clips of the Wednesday meeting with Foxhoven and the Legislative Oversight Committee, of which Senator Bolkin was front and center, asking all the questions that were on our mind. I know it was on mine. I was saying, yay, yes, all right. And one of those revelations that came out, because you kept asking questions, Senator, was that you said, how is it okay for them to only give us 30 days notice and say bye? Oh, no, they gave us 60 days notice. Oh, okay. We found that out in asking questions. Asking the question of, if Mayor Health Caritas wasn't willing to sign a contract at 3.3%, then and can't manage the cost of this population, then how is it that the other two who have not the infrastructure, the provider group of any kind to handle this population, how are they going to do it for 3.3%? Were they held to a different standard, money backing, or do they have more cash flow? I doubt that that's the answer. And then you uncovered that they were given, is it somewhere around 11 million or near that, to handle that transition cost. But if you hadn't asked the question, you may not have gotten that information. So I would like to have the senator come up and talk to us a little bit more about your impressions, where you as a legislator, what you think we should be doing.
Happy to do it. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Joe Bolkema. I'm a member of the Iowa Senate, and I've worked on healthcare for, I suppose, about 35 years, and worked a lot in this area. Bob Bacon talked about redesign the county system, going to the regional mental health system. But before I make a few comments about where I think we are and what I think we need to do, I'd like to give a shout out to Bob Welsh. I think this is and Sean, I think this is the third November in a row that we've been on Medicaid privatization and how it's going. It's disappointing that we couldn't get anybody here from DHS or from the MCOs today. And also like to say thanks to Leah and Ann and Mary, and also to Bob Bacon. There was a time in Iowa where we turned to Bob Bacon as we were working to redesign and make our system work better in the mental health and disability area. And Bob Bacon would come to the Capitol and tell us what to do, and we would do it because he was on the cutting edge of the things that we needed. And of course, Jane and the work of the Johnson County case managers. It's been an extraordinarily difficult time for the people that do the services and manage the services, and we've had good cooperation with our supervisors. Rod Sullivan's here has been one of the leaders in that regard. And then my colleagues, Senator Dvorsky had to run off to a meeting, but Senator Kinney, Representative Jacoby, who over the last number of months, year and a half, have taken calls from families, taken calls from providers, and trying to sort this out in the best way we can. And so there's been a lot of work that's happened, and there's still a lot of issues. I have a question for you, and the question is, who do you think depends on the Iowa Medicaid safety net? Who depends on that?
The most vulnerable Iowans.
Well, I think we all do. We all do. A mom that has a baby in Mason City this week with an intellectual disability, she needs Medicaid, right? A farmer in DeWitt in a nursing home who spends all his savings needs the Medicaid program. Somebody driving down I-80 this afternoon that gets in a horrible car accident and becomes a quadriplegic, they need Medicaid. And for a lot of folks who work for low-wage employers in this state, who do a lot of the hard jobs, who don't and can't afford the insurance if it's provided, or many times it's not provided, those folks depend on the Affordable Care Act and the expansion of Medicaid. And it could be any one of us at any moment that need this safety net. And I think there are really, really big concerns about big holes being punched in our safety net. And I think it's time for us, as we look ahead and what we can do about this, and I've got a couple ideas that I'll share, that it's time for us to, I think, did Casey say it? Somebody said, no, it's time to fight back. Ryan's mom said it, and she's exactly right. I want to do a very brief timeline just to give people where we've been. November 2014, Governor Branstad got reelected to a second kind of comeback term. He did not campaign on privatizing one of the most important health insurance programs that provides health care to nearly 600,000 Iowans. November 2014. In January 2015, the legislature came into session, and the governor announced, Senator Kinney's first month in the legislature, the governor announced, I've decreed that we're going to have an RFP and we're going to hire big, large managed care insurance companies to come in and manage more than $4 billion in state and federal resources, providing care to 540,000 people. There were a lot of concerns in January. We went through the session, we went through the process, but the governor, frankly, he had the authority to basically make this so. And so on January 1st, 2016, a year later, privatization was supposed to begin. It didn't begin on January 1st, as people remember. CMS delayed it a couple times, and then on April 1st, 2016, we started with managed care. What have we learned?
April Fool's Day.
April Fool's Day. Thank you, Bob. Well, providers have not, we've had the litany of concerns. Providers not being paid, services being cut, significant costs, red tape, bureaucratic hassles to thousands of healthcare providers, right? They had to scramble to put in place 3 different billing systems, 3 different prior authorization process. I mean, it's been a nightmare for small employers and large employers to accommodate this. So that was April of 2016, and then we went for a year, and then on May 24th, let me say before May 24th, just tons of concern. We have a legislative oversight committee. Legislature's been largely ineffective in overseeing this. The executive branch and the governor is extremely powerful and has made every single decision associated with this. And Governor Branstad, after hearing from providers, from families, repeatedly said everything's fine. Chuck Palmer would come to meeting after meeting telling us everything's fine, full steam ahead. Didn't listen to not one concern. They've made 0 changes through last May. In May of 2017, May 24th, Governor Kim Reynolds is sworn in as governor. So she inherits the Branstad program that she basically sat in the co-seat, and put in place. So over the last number of months, some of us who have worked a lot on this have thought, geez, it's great, we're going to have a new governor, somebody to listen. Somebody's going to take some of these concerns to heart. And I'm disappointed to say today, since May, there's been no change in any attitude from the executive branch of this state to make any significant change in any single way to what's happened with Medicaid privatization. So then in November, just this month, AmeriHealth exits. We now have 2 managed care companies. We learned on Tuesday that we only got a 30-day notice, and then we learned on Wednesday it was actually a 60-day notice after they went back, and the director of DHS said, well, I think it was only 30 days, and then the next day they got questioned about it. Oh, no, I've got the right answer day. It was 60 days. I thought when they told me they were leaving, I could convince them they wouldn't that not to leave, is what he said. And of course, They lost several $100 million. They were on their way out the door no matter what the DHS director was going to say. The upshot of it's been it only gives providers, families, consumers, everybody 30 less days. 60 days is not a lot, but 30 days is not nearly enough time to transition 215,000 families to a new insurance program. So here we are. I said last week, and I'll say it again, we have, and I'm not opposed to managed care. There's a place for managed care. It isn't the entire program, which is we're the only state in the country that said we should put every single person that's in our Medicaid under this management. This is the worst Medicaid privatization program in the country. And I think when I look back to January 2015, when Governor Branstad came back to Iowa, he'd been at a Republican Governors Association meeting. They get together with the governors. Governors all talk about the stuff they're doing in their states. Privatization's happening in other states. Governor comes back and says, by God, we'll do it here, right? Didn't ask the legislature, didn't ask anybody. And that's where we are today. The legislature has no real ability to make much change, any change. The executive branch, in this case, and the governor has all the cards in terms of where we head from here. Let me make a couple more points and then I'll stop because I'm getting, Bob, I need water, Bob. I didn't think I'd need water, Bob, but I do. So why are we having the problems? I think we have a lack of expertise at the Department of Human Services and in the governor's office on how to manage an enormous health insurance enterprise. It's been noted earlier, Medicaid is really complicated. There are lots of things to it, and I believe we don't have we have good people, but the governor has no expertise in health care. The new Medicaid, we don't have a Medicaid director today. We need one. The new DHS director, really good guy, has no experience in health insurance or managing a big system. So that is a huge deficit. And we need to hire a really, really good experienced Medicaid director because we have folks, these MCOs they're outplaying us, okay? They're smarter than we are. They know the business better than we do, okay? And so if we're gonna keep going, we need to improve that. There's been zero transparency. This week, as I made an example of, we thought it was 60 days, but it's 30 days. There's 100 other examples of things we learned in real time, and if you don't ask the right question, you don't get the answer. On Tuesday of last week, or 2 weeks ago, AmeriHealth we're leaving. DHS said we're going to take the 215,000 families and auto-enroll them to the 2 other companies equally. So they each get about 100,000 new customers. On Tuesday, last Tuesday at 12:58, we're getting ready to sit down at 1 o'clock. Email comes into the phones. DHS has decided that all 215,000 families are going to be auto-signed to United. As we're sitting down at this meeting to discuss what's going on. Their handout that they had mailed out to everybody said, you can choose from one of 2 companies. Okay? So it's just like, what kind of operation are we running here, okay? So there's been zero transparency on the costs, on any kind of savings. If there have been savings, what have we saved money on? There's been zero on how has this improved people's health, right? Which is, at the end of the day, the 2 talking points from the governor are, we're going to save money and people are going to be healthier. And there's no evidence of either of those things.
And accessibility.
And accessibility services. They've just gone through like 8 months of contract negotiations in secret. We learned that they gave a 3.3% increase, but there's a bunch of other stuff in that contract that we don't know about. And when the director was asked about it, he said, read the contract. So there's no accountability for these decisions at this point. There were a couple examples given by people at the meeting last Tuesday of the Medicaid Assistance Advisory Council, where they described where people that had been receiving services, high needs, paraplegic individuals who had been receiving services in their homes effectively. They're people like the Casey Hayes example. They were fired because they didn't have the credentials, got pneumonia, went in the hospital and died. The MCO said, I can't, that's a private question. I can't answer what happened on that one to the person. The MCOs are at the table. The director of DHS is sitting back here. It's like, what's your take on this? He didn't have any comment about it. So there are people in very vulnerable places that have died, hard to believe, bunch of cases, and there's no accountability for this. And that's that. In the old system, there was accountability in it. We knew we could get to the director of DHS. I turned to the director and it's like, dude, what are you doing about this? Who's overseeing these companies on the behalf of taxpayers? I didn't say that, but I didn't say dude. So there's no accountability. How can we have a system with all this money, so much on the line, and there's nobody accountable? And then the governor has basically stopped. Governor Reynolds has basically stopped listening. That might sound harsh to people, but it's true. Everything is fine. Jerry Foxhoven the director of DHS is Jerry Foxhoven. A week ago when AmeriHealth announced they were leaving, he said this probably is a good thing. They weren't probably doing their job right. This is good. This is really good. It shows we're managing. So it just says.
But he was going to convince them they could stay.
That's pretty. Yeah.
Right?
Yes. AmeriHealth should have been.
So Senator Bolcom,
yes.
One of the things that this planning committee has decided to publicly recommend with this tape going to the governor's office and to Director Foxhoven and IME is that we would, our recommendation is to have the state resume at the very least direct oversight for the home and community-based waiver and long-term services and supports populations. Would you also support that recommendation?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the director of DHS a couple weeks ago at the Human Services Council said, "Hey, we should time out here. We should bring the LTSS population back under state management." He was quoted in the paper. He left the office. He left that meeting, and then somebody told him, "No, we're not doing that." Because he ran from that. He said on last Tuesday, I asked him about it. Oh no, the managed care companies should do this. So I think it's great to send a letter. I don't want to be too fatalistic here about where we're at. I've been to dozens of meetings, spent hours and hours working on this, and my gut tells me that there's a shorter that all the data, all the videos, all the stories, there's been no shortage of those things. And I don't believe that. I think what we need, and I'm going to disagree with something you said earlier, Sean, it is about people and it's about politics, okay? Politics, and I don't mean, politics aren't bad. It's how we decide stuff. Right? It's how we decide stuff. We had a vote recently in Johnson County on whether we're going to fund some school infrastructure, right? That was a political decision. There are people that said don't do it. There were people that said let's do it. The voters said let's do it, and we did it. I think that's good. That's politics, right? Who the governor is, in this case, is going to determine whether we fix this or not.
That's true.
So I think in the short run, and I've been in a bunch of meetings with folks about how can we fix this, how can we fix this. I think the people that can fix this have turned us off. They have a plan. The plan is, in their mind, working, and the way to fix it is next November, for people that don't like what's going on, is to get focused on, there's going to be a whole bunch of candidates running. They ought to be here telling us what they think about this, right? Because I think, given the fact that we went from Governor Branstad, who didn't listen, I had hoped that Governor Reynolds was going to listen. She's not listening, and we have a decision to make. if you want to have a Medicaid program that does brings those LTSS people back under state oversight, and maybe other pieces of it under state oversight, I would encourage you to encourage Governor Reynolds to come to a public dialogue in a public setting and have her defend what her Department of Human Services is doing in a public way with providers. She has not had to face people in a setting like this, back and forth, so she can make the case. That's what we need in the short run, and then people can decide whether she should lead this state or not. And there's a bunch of other issues. This is a really important one.
And this touches so many people's lives. When you talked about the different people who's affected by Medicaid, all of us. And so this videotape of today's session is going to the governor's office. And so I would make a direct appeal as the chair of Johnson County Task Force on Aging and Disability, as one of the task force for Heritage Area Agency on Aging in Eastern Iowa, and Leah with Access to Independence of the Eastern Iowa Corridor, representing 8 counties in Eastern Iowa, and Jane with Johnson County Case Management, that the governor, legislators, Director Foxhoven, and the Iowa Medicaid director, and currently is Mickey Steyer, that you would listen to these stories, listen to these concerns, and understand that we would appreciate the opportunity to talk to you directly as soon as possible. So please contact us. Let us know when you can come here face to face, because many of the people that are impacted by Iowa Medicaid are unable to transport themselves because transportation is an issue. So they can't get to your listening session in December in Des Moines. It is after decisions are being made, and this information is important in making your decisions over the next couple of weeks. I want to thank everyone who shared their video, their stories, every one of you that came out today to talk to us. I'm sorry that we did not have time to get to the 2 cards for this video portion, but we will make arrangements to hear your stories as well. And thank you again to everyone, Senator Bolcom, all of our elected officials, for coming out. Please do pick up your advocacy paperwork, the flyer that is at the table back there. Larry Kuji is holding it up. And send an email, make a phone call, write your story down. However you've been impacted, please send it. Let's flood the office. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, may I? After we had our first forum on managed care at the end, Senator Bolcom said to the MCOs, will you come back in a year? And they all said yes. And so that's what started the thing, the movement. Let me say a couple of things. I really am glad that I live in the Republic of Johnson County. I've been here since 1965. The one consistent thing about the Johnson County Board of Supervisors is they have always put human services at the forefront. And that is not a part of their job description of mandatory things that they have to do, but they have done it. And so Lisa and Rod, I thank you. I introduced several elected officials. One came in after that, and that's Senator Jacoby. Dave, it's good to have you here. Dave is in the very back. Let me say, I want to express my appreciation to these 3 ladies who put together this program and for their dedication and commitment. I don't know about you, but I felt like playing when Mrs. Mulhausen spoke about fight, fight, fight. I wanted to play the Ira Fight song. I trust you all have signed in, okay? We will keep you informed if you wrote in so that I can read your email address, okay? If you don't hear from me in a month, write to me and say, Hey, you must not have been able to read my writing. My email address is very simple, WELSHBOB@AOL.com. It's very simple, means that I was very early in the process and didn't know you were supposed to get all those fancy names. Again, let me thank you for coming. The number of people who are here far exceeded my expectation when we had 4 no-shows, because you all showed up. Kim, may I tell them of your position?
I'm Kim Kuji, married to Larry Baxter, and I'm on the council that oversees DHS. So been taking notes, and there's also another council member here as well.
What Kim's saying, if you couldn't hear, is she's on the commission that basically has the authority over DHS. Now, that doesn't mean she has the authority over the executive branch. But Kim, we're glad that you could come today. Thank you all, and fight, fight, fight.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you.